Welcome to the Before You Bet Racing preview for Saturday the 7th of March. Of course, Super Saturday at Flemington in Melbourne and Randwick Guineas Day in Sydney. 4 huge Group 1s across Australia on Saturday, and we're looking forward to previewing those 4 races in our racing preview brought to you by Betfair. If you are having a bet this Saturday, make sure you jump on the Betfair exchange, get involved in the game within the game, www.betfair.com.au. We thank them for their support, and trust me, once you use the Betfair exchange, you will not turn back. The first of our Group 1s we're going to preview is the Group 1 Newmarket Handicap over 1,200 metres down the famous Flemington Straight. Of course, it is under handicap conditions. It looks like it's going to be a wet track at Flemington. We had a huge downpour of rain in Melbourne throughout the week, which has caused the track to currently be in the soft 7 range. If there is no more rain throughout Saturday, it'll probably remain in that soft range. It will improve though. Flemington typically dries out pretty well, but I would expect us to be somewhere around a soft 5 or soft 6 for race day, which really changes the whole complexion of this race because I think it's a different race on a good surface to what it would be on a wet surface. So I've planned for it to have a little bit of cut in the ground, and for that reason I've gone with the Hawkes Train Colt Exceedance on top. It's currently around $5.20 on the Betfair exchange. The query is that he comes into this race first up from a spell, and horses typically, if you look through the history of this race, don't fire very well first up in this race. Of course, we saw Redkirk Warrior buck that trend a couple of years ago when he won first up down the straight in the Newmarket, but I'm tipping Exceedance to do that again here. There's been a lot of conjecture about where he's going to line up first up from a spell, but I think the Newmarket's probably been the plan all along for a Group 1 winning 3-year-old. He has won over this track and distance. Of course, we saw him win the Coolmore Stud Stakes back in the spring. That too was on a wet track where he beat Bivouac. Again, I think the wet track is key to his chances, and the wetter the better for him. Drawn wide, I don't think that's a problem. I think he's probably got the best turn of foot in this race, so we'll see him somewhere out the back. And if they are able to run on throughout the day, I think he'll be coming home with a flourish down the outside. And I think, as I said, I think he's got the best turn of foot in the race. So expect him just to find a back and launch home over the top. Hopefully he's good enough first up from a spell to do so. It's currently around $5.20 on the exchange. The winner of the Black Caviar Lightning Stakes first up was G-Tra or Jai-Trash, however it is pronounced. I think he's got a really good chance of going back-to-back in the Newmarket here and winning second up today. He does have to carry top weight of 57 kilos, which is a couple of kilos more than anything else in this race, but he's got a terrific record second up from a spell. He's got a great record on soft ground, and he's won 3 from 3 at Flemington. So drawn barrier 2, he's going to be locked away somewhere on the inside, you'd think. But I just think this race, under the circumstances, he looks to profile very well. As I said, his stats for this race line up terrific. And what I found most interesting about that win first up in the Lightning Stakes was the fact that he ran the fastest final 200 metres of the race. Now, 1,200 metres isn't quite his best distance. He probably prefers it a little bit shorter, but he has won over the 1,200 metres before. But the fact that he did record the fastest final 200 metres of the race in the Lightning Stakes suggests to me that 1,200 metres, he might be able to handle that second up from the spell. So I certainly don't think he's out of this race, despite being the top weight, carrying a couple of kilos extra than everything else. And around $9.40 on the exchange at the moment, I think is a pretty good price for him. Bivouac's a horse that probably wants it firmer rather than softer in terms of the track conditions. As I said, we saw him run second to Exceedance back in the Coolmore Stud Stakes in the spring, and that was on the wet track. I think the wet track plays into Exceedance's hands more than it does Bivouac. He kind of struggled in the Oakley Plate on a day where it really paid to be right up on speed. It was an on-pace dominated day and an inside lane dominated day. He unfortunately was caught in the 3-wide running line back towards midfield. So forgive him for that, but the big query is Craig Williams chooses to ride Loving Gabby here and jumps off Bivouac. So that is some cause for concern, I suppose. But if he was to bring his best form to the race, like we saw back in the spring, he'd certainly give this a red-hot shake. As I said, he'd probably want the track to dry out a little bit so that he can show his best. But if he was to bring his best second up from a spell here, down to the lightweight, he'd certainly be a strong winning chance. He's currently around $6.60 on the exchange. The other one to include could be the Inevitable, the Tasmanian horse. He's currently around a $10.50 chance in the exchange. The query for me is just his class. You can't deny his winning record. He's got 8 wins from 11 starts, but this is a very strong Group 1 race, and we haven't seen him tested in this kind of company before. So the question mark is whether he's up to this kind of level of racing, but for a horse with 8 wins from 11 starts, it's hard to kind of knock them. So for me, Exceedance on top in the Newmarket Handicap, and I think G-Tra or Jar-Trash is the value at around $9.40. You might get double figure odds with a few concerns over him being top weight. So that's the way I've gone in the Newmarket. The other Group 1 of the day at Flemington is the Group 1 Australian Cup. That's under weight for age conditions. It's over 2,000 metres. I'm really keen on basically 2 horses and 2 horses only in this race. I'll highlight 4, but the way I'll be betting is basically to back 2, maybe 3, depending on the price of one of the other horses. But I'm very keen on Kingswool Dream here. He's currently $8.20 on the Betfair Exchange, and I think he profiles terrific for this race. I think everything lines up in his favour, and I'm very surprised at the current each-way odds we're getting. If you look at his record, well, first off, let's start with his 2 runs this preparation. He's been beaten 0.4 lengths and 0.2 lengths in his 2 starts this preparation. He comes into this race 3rd up from a spell. His overall record 3rd up from a spell is absolutely phenomenal. He's had 4 starts for 3 wins and a 2nd placing, so he's ready to peak, stepping up to the 2,000 metres for the first time this preparation. He was a Group 1 winner over this track and distance last preparation. He ticks the box with the soft track. The soft track poses him no problems. He draws the inside barrier for a sucked run, probably further forward than midfield. And I just think everything lines up in his favour. You know, 3rd up from a spell. He hasn't been far away in his 2 starts this preparation. Steps up in distance to a track and distance that he won a Group 1 at last preparation. Handles all conditions, draws well. And of course, as I've mentioned, he is ready to peak 3rd up from a spell. So Kingswool Dream's a clear top pick for mine at around $8.20. I think the other horse in the race that I'm very keen to back is Regal Power, WA Loyal. I thought his first up run at Caulfield over 1,800 metres was terrific. That was on the same day where it was on-pace dominated and inside lane dominated. He got snagged back to last, which is his racing pattern. He was never going to be ridden further forward than what he was first up. And of course, he came basically the widest down the outside on that occasion in the quicksand. He was beaten just over a length on that occasion. I thought that was a terrific run under the circumstances. I think stepping up to 2,000 metres, 2nd up from a spell where he's got 2 wins from 3 starts, I think suits him a whole lot better. He does draw wide, but I don't think that's a major concern because of his racing pattern where he will go back. And hopefully on an even Flemington track where he gets a huge straight to wind up and show his turn of foot, will hopefully bring him right into the race. He's currently around a $7.20 chance on the Betfair Exchange. And I think, the WA form has proven time and time again in the last 12 months or so just how strong it is. So I thought his first up run was terrific. I think he's much better suited here, 2nd up under the conditions of the race. And I'd be very surprised if he wasn't hitting the line very hard, Regal Power. Avilius is the favourite for the race at the moment. He's a $3.95 chance on the exchange. He's on the 1 week backup. He's had 2 starts back from a spell. I think stepping up to the 2,000 metres suits him much better. We did see him win a Group 1 in Sydney last preparation on the 7-day backup, so the quick backup's no concern for me. He's got a good 3rd up record, and he will appreciate the cut in the ground, the soft conditions. So the softer or the wetter, probably the better for Avilius. Just at $3.95, I think he's well and truly short enough, and as I've highlighted, I think those other 2 horses are worth backing ahead of him. But he may drift out to around $5 or so, in which case you can probably have something on. Look, he's certainly a very good chance here. He's certainly suited under the conditions of the race. I just think he's short enough at his current odds. The horse I've thrown in for 4th is the Melbourne Cup winner, Vow and Declare. I think he's always going to run a good race, but I think first up from a spell, 2,000 metres with the Melbourne Cup in mind, they won't have him screwed down at all. I think they've been very public in saying they won't have him screwed down, but I expect him to run an honest race nonetheless, and so I've thrown him in for 4th, currently at around $14. So that's the 2 Group 1s at Flemington on Super Saturday. We'll head over to Sydney now where we've got 2 Group 1s at Randwick. The first of those is the Canterbury Stakes. It's a weight for age race over 1,300 metres. Again, they've had plenty of rain in Sydney and the track is currently rated in the heavy range. So with a little bit more rain predicted on Saturday, I don't suspect we'll see that upgraded too much. So I'm planning for a soft or heavy track in Sydney. The Canterbury Stakes, we've got a small field. The way I've gone here is with the Colt Standout, trained by Gerald Ryan, ridden by Tommy Berry. He was a dominant winner first up over the likes of Elise. Elise then came out and won her next start, so the form looks relatively good out of that race. The big query for Standout is, of course, he's had 5 career starts and they've all been on good tracks, so the wet track is really an unknown for him. If you look back through his family and his breeding, they do tend to handle soft tracks, but Gerald Ryan came out the other day and said he worked on a heavy track the other day, and the track rider came in and said he was hopeless on it. So if the track was to remain in the heavy range, that would cause some obvious concerns with Standout. But if we do see the track upgraded into the soft range, I'm happy to have him on top as our top selection at around $3.25 on the exchange at the moment. Savatiano, we saw her resume with a dominant 2.8 length victory first up from a spell. That was on a soft track. She comes into this second up from a spell where she's had 6 starts and she's never finished outside the top 2 from those 6 starts when second up. So she's sure to run well here. Again, she probably doesn't want it too heavy, but soft track is fine for her. She's had 7 starts on soft ground for 6 placings, so the soft ground will suit her. Just doesn't want it any wetter than that, I don't think. The strength out of that race is the Query. This is a stronger race than what she faced first up. However, she did win that in dominant fashion, so she can measure up here, especially in a small field. If the track does remain in the heavy range, I think the horse currently over the odds is the Bostonian. He's currently around an $11 chance, and I think that's a terrific bit of value. This horse is undefeated on heavy ground from 2 starts. He's undefeated from 3 starts at the distance, and he's won 5 of his 6 starts when first up from a spell. So he certainly gets conditions to suit. The small field, I think, will suit him as well. And as I said, I think he's much better suited on the heavy ground than the likes of Standout or Savatiano. So just monitor the track conditions. Either way, probably at $11, he is the value of the race, whether it's soft or heavy. But Standout on top for me in the Canterbury Stakes, and the value will be the Bostonian. Just in terms of Elise, we see her, she's currently a $4.10 chance in the exchange. I think that's a poison price, and I can't work out why she's so kind of close in the market to Standout. I understand this is a small field, and so that does bring her into contention, but she was comfortably beaten first up by Standout. Yes, she came out and won last start, second up from a spell, but that was over 1,400 metres. She drops back to 1,300 metres today, which is a slight query. And she's also third up from a spell, which she doesn't have typically a very good record at. She's had 5 starts third up from a spell, has only managed to win 1 of those. So that kind of really, when they're meeting at the same weights, her meeting Standout at the same weights for a 1.5 length defeat, I can't work out why she's so close in the market at this stage. So I'm very happy to take Elise on. As I said, I'll be in the corner of Standout and the Bostonian at a bit of value. The final Group 1 on the day is the Randwick Guineas at 1,600 metres for the 3-year-olds. It's a terrific race, and just about anything could win this. I thought this was a wide open market. Typically, the form reference for this race is to look at the Hobartville Stakes, where basically the majority of this field comes through the Hobartville Stakes at their last start. The winner of the Hobartville Stakes last time out was Brandenburg. He's currently a $9.60 chance here, and I think he's a very good chance of backing up and winning the Randwick Guineas here. He's had 8 career starts. He's never missed a placing in those 8 starts. As I said, first up from a spell, he won the Hobartville Stakes. I think he can improve second up from a spell. He's drawn wide. He'll go forward like he did in the Hobartville. The wet ground will pose him no problems at all. And I think at near double figure odds, for a horse that won the Hobartville Stakes, and the Hobartville Stakes being such a strong form reference over the last 5 or 10 years, I think it's worth backing him again on this occasion. The other horse that ran second to him was Reloaded. Now, he was held up momentarily at the top of the straight in the Hobartville. With Clear running a little bit earlier, he may have been able to challenge Brandenburg, but he was, I thought, comfortably held on the line. However, I do think stepping up to the 1,600 metres second up from a spell is going to play into his hands. I think at $12 on the exchange, he's definitely worth having something on. And the other Waller horse is Pancho that I'm interested in backing. He's currently a $13 chance. He ran 4th in the Hobartville Stakes. There were others hitting the line better than him, but if you look at his record, he's undefeated second up from a spell from 2 previous attempts. So I'm expecting him to improve quite sharply. I think Robbie Dolan rode him first up in the Hobartville, but National Willer jumps on for today's Randwick Guineas. And I just think at $13, Waller's going to have him ready to peak for this Group 1 assignment. I think he's worth having something on as well. The likes of Castelvecchio and Shadow Hero, of course, take up a large percentage of the market. They're expected to improve off their efforts first up in the Hobartville. I think Castelvecchio is definitely looking for 2,000 metres, and the same can probably be said about Shadow Hero. Now, Castelvecchio hit the line better than Shadow Hero first up, but I just think he's a 2,000 metre horse, and I think over the 1,600 metres he's still going to find a couple of these horses just a touch sharper than him. So for a couple of horses that are, sub $5 in the market, I'm pretty happy to take them on and back these others coming out of the Hobartville at a little bit better odds. So I'm happy to stick with Brandenburg at around $9.60, happy to stick with Reloaded at around $12, and happy to have something on Pancho at around $13 in the Randwick Guineas. So that's my assessment of the 4 Group 1 races on Saturday the 7th of March. It's going to be a super race day both in Melbourne and Sydney. As I said, Super Saturday at Flemington, Randwick Guineas Day in Sydney. You can find all of my previews, race by race, every one of the 18 races in Melbourne and Sydney on beforeyoubet.com.au. Make sure you head to the Betfair Exchange, betfair.com.au. Thank you for supporting this preview, and make sure if you're having a bet, you get involved with the game within the game.